Exodus 20, verse 1. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on their children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord, Yahweh, your God, in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy or set apart. 6 days you shall do your labor and all your work. But on the seventh day, it's a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it, you shall not do any work. Not you, not your son, not your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, or even your livestock, or the sojourner or visitor who's within your gates. For in 6 days, the Lord made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Verse 17, and you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. We are going to talk about one of the most comprehensive realities of being human. What I'm going to talk about this morning really encapsulates what it means to live as a human being. You know what's odd about our society? Is that we live in one of the most wealthy, healthy societies in the history of the world. We have things that previous history couldn't even imagine. My grandmother, who's almost 100 years old, when I talk to her about things that she remembers when she was a child, horse-drawn carriages and steam engines, and all of a sudden I show her my iPhone with more technology in my hand than sent up the rockets in the 60s. It's unbelievable how far we've come in 100 years. But understand this, though we have so much, you would think in our culture, how could we ever covet? How could we ever say, I want what you have? Why do you have something I don't have? I like what you got. Why don't I get that? You would think in our culture, we're satisfied. We are so content. We got it all. We have more than anybody in the history of the world. How in the world could I be jealous of you? But you know what? Discontentedness and covetousness rages in our society. And here's my point this morning as we start. It will never matter how much you have. It will only matter if your contentment comes from God. From Mount Sinai, so we're still at Mount Sinai, the burning mountain, God is speaking to his people in the middle of the Sinai desert at the mountain. And he's speaking out of the thunder and the lightning and the earthquake. It's basically all of weather systems compacted on top of the mountain. And it's burning and it's flaming. And God is speaking out of this, the Ten Commandments. He gave the Ten Commandments as an overview of the whole law in descending order of honor and authority. So the first one was, no other gods before me, no carved images to worship. Do not take the name of God in vain. Keep the Sabbath holy. So the first four are about God, our vertical relationship with God. We honor God above all. We don't honor God under men. We honor God first. That's what the first four are about. The next six are about people. Honor your father and mother. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. And do not be a false witness, which we looked at last week. So how many of you guys, perpetual liars, did we tell the truth this week? Did anybody apply what I spoke on last week? Nobody did. You guys will lie to me anyway, okay, right? You're like, oh, I did. I told the truth. Actually, I really did. Did anybody go from 47% telling the truth to like 49 or anything like that? Almost half. Kleptos, have we gone 2 weeks without stealing? Yes, yes, I have. Hey, that's applying. When you hear God's word, apply it. Don't come for some fancy little sermon. I don't stand up here for your enjoyment. I stand up here for your edification, that you become more like Jesus. Make sure you apply. Now today, one of the most difficult things to apply is what we're going to talk about right now, as it closes up the Ten Commandments. Number 10, do not covet. Do not covet. Because the Israelites lived in poverty, at the bottom of the Egyptian society as slaves, their desire for better things was huge. So those of us that grew up without very much, maybe you grew up in a big family, dad left you with mom. Mom didn't have a job. She had to live off of what the United States provides her, Social Security, or you lived off of stamps. You had to take your stamps to the grocery store to get food, or whatever it was. You had to go to free places to get clothing. Some of us grew up like that. And so it's interesting, when you grow up literally dirt poor, or if you've ever been in a country that's dirt poor, I do work in Haiti, and I do work in orphanages in Haiti. And you know what's interesting is I'll show up, and I'm the whitest, pastiest guy probably on the island, and I'm playing with the kids and doing pastoral conferences for the pastors of Haiti there, totally free, everything's free. And you know what's interesting is I'll be playing with the kids there in Haiti. They're literally sleeping in the dirt. They're in the poverty of a poverty-stricken country. They're at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. Nobody even wanted those kids in a country that has nothing. And you know what's funny is when you're with people that love Jesus, even when you have nothing, you can be content. I remember sitting, they made one big meal for everybody. Huge pot of rice, some chicken, if they could, they raise chicken there because it's expensive. So you got this whole orphanage of kids, and I'm eating. And so I was like the yay, the pastor's here. And so they put me at this head table in this orphanage, right? And so I'm sitting there with the director and all these guys, and we're eating rice and chicken and all this stuff. And all the kids have their own little portions. They're all in rows of tables, and they have their own little portion. And they gave me a double portion of their food. And you know what's interesting is they ate all their food, and as I was eating, I realized that they're all like looking at me when I'm eating. And pretty soon, I was full. And I had about a third of my food left. And in my area, right here, if you're finished eating at the Habit or In-N-Out or whatever, you just take that thing and you just go chunk right in the trash. And you know, when I stood up and I had the food left over, the kids in the front were like this. Like a hawk on that rice. And I go, hey, do you guys want to eat the rest of this rice? And like 28 kids come running up and they start eating this food. And you know what it made me realize is, one, there should never ever be a reason why wealthy people, which is you and I, should ever covet somebody else's stuff because we have too much already. But it didn't matter that if you were at the bottom in the dirt or if you live in extreme wealth, it doesn't matter because you can be content at the bottom or you can be content at the top. In the same way, you can be a covetous person at the bottom and you can be a covetous person at the top. Israel, as a nation, are enslaved by the Egyptians. They cry out to God, come rescue us. God sends them Moses out of the desert to rescue them. When you're in poverty, it's very easy for you to go, why don't I have that? Egypt, 3,500 years ago, when they were subjugating Israel, was a very wealthy nation. A lot of the things that you would go visit today, as far as statues and stuff, they were built around that same time. Realize that as a nation, they probably were, every day they got up and go, why don't I have that? Look at that sweet chariot. I got to walk everywhere. Stupid old sandals. That guy rides in a chariot. Not only were they probably suffering from jealousy of the Egyptians, but they were probably even jealous inside of their own culture. Why does he have that wife? She's way better looking than my wife. Wow! Jesus, help. We got the dirt floor in their place is nicer than ours. We got potholes. They got a nice flat dirt floor. You can even be jealous of dirt. And God, watch, God pulls the whole nation out and brings them to Mount Sinai, and he says to this poverty-stricken nation who's never had power in hundreds of years, if there was any time that he could have spoken to these poverty people about, you know what, if you need to covet a little bit, I totally get it. I understand. It's okay. It's okay to covet. You guys don't have anything. It's all right. He could have told them that. You know what he tells them? You don't covet somebody else's stuff. Because coveting is a heart issue. You will never have enough. Israel, when I make you a great nation someday and bless you in Canaan, you'll never have enough. Because coveting is a heart issue. It's not a wallet issue. Coveting is a matter of the heart, not a matter of your bank account. So he tells his people who don't have anything, right before they get stuff, don't covet. Because the Israelites lived in poverty at the bottom of the Egyptian society as slaves, their desire for better things was huge. However, they were not to have a jealous desire, which is resentment against a person instead of happiness for them. A jealous desire for someone else's home, spouse, servants or employees, which indicated significant wealth, working animals, which were implements of making and maintaining wealth, or for anything else that belonged to another. You know what I love about Facebook? It is the ultimate jealousy provider. If you ever thought, I'm not a jealous person, I'm not jealous. Wait till your friend posts something on your Facebook feed, and it's like, I'm taking my whole family to Tahiti for a month over the summer. You can't even walk to like the 7-Eleven because you're so dirt poor. But you see your friend taking a whole family to Tahiti. And you look on the feed and you go, you know what? I'm not going to even like those pictures. I ain't going to like one of them. I'm not going to press like. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to scroll past all these pictures. And you know, in the back of your mind, you're like, stupid. I don't even like Tahiti. Tahiti's lame. I love Temecula. I love my own house more than I love Tahiti. The ultimate example, watch, the ultimate example, if you have a covetous heart, or if I have a covetous heart, is if jealousy rises in you when you see God's goodness to someone else. That's the ultimate example you know that your heart is not right with God. Jealousy will produce inside of you a desire for somebody else's things or place in life that is not for you. Jealousy is the ultimate flag that goes, things aren't right with you and God. And so when you're looking through Facebook or you're looking through Instagram or you see these pictures of people, hey, we just bought a new car. I just bought the brand new Lamborghini. Dude, it's sweet. Oh, man. You wouldn't believe that thing. 0 to 60 in like 1.9 seconds. It's crazy awesome. You're like, dude, I can't even spell car. I'm so poor. And you look at that, and all of a sudden, instead of going, God, thank you so much that you blessed him or her with that, instead of saying that, you go, why don't I have that? But you want to know the reality is, the kids sitting over in Haiti in the dirt would trade with your life in a millisecond. And here's the point. The point is, it's never enough. It's never enough for you to get rid of being a covetous person. It's never enough. You want to know why? Because it's not about what you have or don't have. It's about if you trust God with your life. Because if you trust God, then you'll be thankful for what you have, knowing that he will bless you in the future. But even if he doesn't bless you with what you want, you can be content now. And there's no greater thing in life than being content. Because when you continually chase the next thing or the next Pokemon, you will never find them all. By the way, did you know a guy quit his job In Europe, a grown man quit his job to go find Pokemon all around Europe. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't feel bad, because it's really lame. But Google it and figure it out. Now, it's an ingenious game where you take your phone around and you're in an environment and little imaginary things pop up and you try to catch them. It's ingenious. I love it. But realize jealousy can happen at any time. And my youth pastor, who you just saw here, told us that we have Pokemon actually on our property. And some pretty good ones I've heard. If you have no idea what in the world I'm talking about, Google it. So imaginary creatures in your little phone app pop up and you try to catch them. And this is why you see people at the duck pond walking around like this. You just go, are they handing out free meth or whatever around? Why are people walking, like zombies walking around? Listen, awesome game, totally ingenious, fantastic. But even in a game, you can be jealous of who's getting stuff, how many Pokemon someone else has. So in other words, whether it's a cool little app on a phone, or whether it's a car sitting in your garage, or whether it's somebody else's spouse or lifestyle, you will never get to a point where you don't covet anymore. You must come to a point where you are content with what God has. Because contentment brings pleasure to life. If you lose contentment, you lose God's blessing. Contentment gives you pleasure with what God has already given you. Coveting is the opposite of contentment. The last command, this last one we looked at, do not covet, was a catch-all for where most violations of the previous 9 commandments, not honoring the true God, making a version of God to control, which was creating an idol, profaning God's name, working without resting on the to worship, dishonoring parents, murdering, adultery, stealing, or lying for gain, come from, which is a selfish, undisciplined heart. Lastly, this last command, God gave a comprehensive mandate about internal motivations, which was unparalleled in ancient laws. So there are other laws before this. Code of Hammurabi, which is previous to the Mosaic Law. There are laws in our culture. You can go to any of the codes and look up what's wrong to do or what's right to do in our culture. But guess what? Not one of them says, I see inside your heart, don't be like that. You want to know why? Because humans cannot tell other humans what's true of the motivation of their heart. This command, the 10th command, do not covet, it is unparalleled in any moral code in history. You want to know why? Because it's the only code that says, I look inside your heart as God and say, don't be like that. There is no other code in the history of humanity that looks inside the heart and goes, don't covet. You want to know why? Because it's not a physical thing. It's not, don't steal that. It's saying the root of your problem isn't that you don't have enough. The root of your problem is that you are not content before God. That you have not said to God, thank you for what I have, and thank you for how you blessed him or her. I'm so glad that you blessed them. Nothing will destroy your life more than jealousy. Jealousy will rob all the joy out of your life. Jealousy for other people will rob the joy out of your life. All the blessings that God has given you, which is more than most people have gotten in the history of the world, you will hate because jealousy will rob the joy out of all the good that God has given you already. So contentment and thankfulness kill covetousness. So when you see your friends going to Tahiti, you know what you say? You like their pictures, all of them, all 2,800 of them, and say, you look fantastic. Tahiti looks good on you. And as much as it grinds you in your heart that someone else has something awesome, you know what? Thankfulness for what God has done for someone else will bring joy into your own heart. Jealousy for what someone else has will absolutely rob you like cancer. It will eat away at all the pleasure of life. Why don't I have him for a husband? Why don't I have her for a wife? Why don't I have kids like that? My kids are lame. Why can't I have those? Stinking kids never listen. They look like perfect. Looks like House on the Prairie. Mine looks like a tornado went through our house. And the point is that jealousy takes all the joy out of your life. It'll take it out of your marriage. It'll take it out of your job. It'll take it out of your recreation. You don't have as nice of a boat as that guy. Why can't I afford that? Why can't we go on that vacation? Covetousness is the poison that just dilutes all the blessing of God in your own life. And God says, do not covet. You know why I can tell you about a heart issue that another person can't? Is because I'm God. And I look inside your heart and I go, don't be like that. You want to know why? Because covetousness basically wraps up the first 9 commandments. Because murder, jealousy, adultery, stealing, lying, all those things come from the majority of it when you want something that you can't have. Only God, as a sovereign ruler, can make demands about an unacceptable heart disposition. Coveting is a lack of contentedness, not a lack of possession. I even put it in italics. I'm going to say it again. Coveting is a lack of contentedness, not a lack of possessions. So we think in our minds, if I had that, boy, I'd really be happy. And maybe you would for a moment, because it's a trinket that catches your eye or your heart. But when another better trinket comes along or that other shiny toy comes along, all of a sudden the things that you took a lot of pleasure in, you don't find pleasure in anymore. You want to know why? Because your contentedness is not in God, it's in stuff. And stuff will always let you down. 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 It's not wrong to enjoy those things. It's not wrong to have stuff. Wealth is from God the way poverty can be from God. Because poverty can teach you lessons and wealth can teach you lessons. But top to bottom, you have to be content. Not saying that you can't work for more stuff. Not saying that you can't work hard to have a better future. What I'm saying is, whatever you have, don't lust after somebody else's stuff. Don't go after somebody else's blessing from God. Because all you do is spit in the face of God going, this stuff ain't good enough for me. What you gave me, this stuff's garbage. What I want is that. And God goes, oh, really? Oh, you don't have enough. Let's go visit the place where people live on a dirt floor and their country's in civil war and they might get butchered tomorrow. Then we'll see how much stress you have in your life. So let's get real for a second about like, oh, I don't have enough. You got enough. We got more than most in history, and we still covet. So this last 10th command couldn't be more appropriate for the United States of America, because that's all of us. We need to be content, satisfied in God. If He gives us more, awesome. If He doesn't give us more, awesome. But we are content with what God has given us. Do we work hard? Yep. But we don't lust after somebody else's blessing. God had promised to provide for His people by rescuing them, which He did to Israel, bringing them to a good land, which He's going to. He's going to bring them to Canaan, and blessing them. God had promised to give them physical and material blessing. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with having wealth. But it can't be your God. God is God. But God's blessings were never meant to be an excuse for greed or a lust for more. So if you have your Bibles, I want you to turn to Ecclesiastes. So it's right in the middle of your Bible. So smack in the middle is a book called Psalms, and the book after that is Proverbs, and the book after that is Ecclesiastes. I want you to turn to Ecclesiastes 5:10. I especially say this to you young men. I want you to underline this, because young men want to be, for the most part, successful. They want to support their families. They want to build a life for themselves, and it tends to be a hang-up for young men, especially men as they start getting older. And I want you to underline this verse. If you need to, get an X-Acto knife and cut this baby out and put it on the top of your computer. Ecclesiastes 5:10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with what? With money. He who loves money will never be satisfied with money. Here's the vicious circle of covet. Ready? if I love money, if this is money for me, if I love money and I pursue money and I lust after money, I will never get there. It's the never getting thing. Because he who loves money never has money enough. There's never enough money where you go, finally things are good. Look what he says. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money. It's a vacuous circle. I love money, but I'll never be satisfied in money. So I love something that I will never get. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also what? Look in your Bible, what does it say? Vanity in the ESV. You know what the Hebrew word for vanity is there? It literally means vapor. It means like nothingness. It means like when you spit into the air, or if you're in a really cold room and you breathe, and the exhaust from your mouth comes out, and it's vapor. It's little pieces of water in the air, and they vanish in a moment. That's literally your wealth. If you chase after stuff and you lust after things, it's literally when you breathe out, they're gone. And for those of us that have gotten a little bit older, we know when we die and we hand stuff off to our kids, they're just putting that junk on eBay. And we're like, oh, son, I've saved this piece of paper for 100 years it's been in our family. And it's worth $1 million, and I want you to pass it on to your grandkids too. The minute daddy's dead, what's this thing worth? Okay, put that on eBay, and we're going to see what this thing's worth. Here's the point, is it doesn't matter what you accumulate, because it's never going to be enough. And when you hand it off to your kids, if it doesn't mean the same thing to them, they're selling that baby and they're using that money for something else. You must learn to live a contented life, one that's satisfied with the blessing of God. He who has money and loves money never has money enough. You're never satisfied because it's a heart issue, not a money issue. Loving God and others was ultimately a matter of the heart, as Jesus reiterated. Humility and thankfulness will kill covetousness. Humility in that a believers deserve nothing, but are graciously given all things to enjoy. Thankfulness in that believers shouldn't grumble about what they don't have, but be thankful for what they do. Realize that everything you want may be given to you by God, but God in his wisdom may restrain that from you to test your heart. Because nothing tests your heart like not getting what you want. Right? So when your kids, they go, you know what, Mom? Gosh, if I could have this bike, I would never want for anything else in the history of the world. There's a bike at Walmart that is so amazing. I can't even wrap my mind around this Huffy BMX bike. I'm going to ride that thing till I'm 58 and a half. I promise, Mom and Dad. And so Mom and Dad in the back of the mind are like, dude, that thing's $78. I don't know if we can afford that right now. But, you save up for 20 years or whatever, as a parent, and you finally buy that thing for your kid at Walmart, and you roll out this bike. Look at this sweet bike, I got you. And your kids are like, the bike! And they get on it, and they go around your cul-de-sac or whatever, and then they put the kickstand up, they walk back inside, and they sit down, they start playing Xbox. You kind of think, I thought when I bought that bike, everything was going to be amazing. And there's not going to be anything that would be wanted more. What you realize with your kids is that if you keep on giving them what they lust after, they never are content with what they already have. It's the same thing that God does with us, because God's not a dysfunctional father. So we as adults, when we lust after things that are not ours, somebody else's spouse, somebody else's job, somebody else's vacations, somebody else's things, he looks at us and goes, man, you haven't learned your lesson of being content. Remember when you were going to be content at $12,000 a year? Well, now you're making $120 a year, and you're still not content. What if I give you 1.5 a year, 1.5 million, you're still not going to be content. It's a bigger house and more stuff, and more insurance to pay on those things. The point is that it never ends. Covetousness must be killed where it's at. Because covetousness, watch, I'm done, is a mixture of the worst parts of us. It's lust for more, it's discontentedness with God, it's materialism, it's pride, it's arrogance, and it's thanklessness to God. Covetousness wraps up all of the sinful side of us. Covetousness is a mixture of the worst of all of our sinful nature. The only way you kill covetousness is to be thankful to God for what he's given other people. When jealousy rises up in me, you know the first thing I do? I don't go, why don't I have that? The first thing I say is, God, I'm so thankful you gave him that. I'm so thankful she has that. What a good God you are for hooking them up. You know what that does instantly to me? It instantly takes jealousy and removes it from me. Because instead of going, I can't believe she or he got that, I go, thank you for blessing them with that. Because other people might be looking at your life going, I wish I had that. Right? You'd be surprised how many people are jealous of you. And you're just like, my life is garbage. People looking at you like, man, if I had that life, I'd be set. So it's never about getting, it's about trusting God. You kill covetousness by being thankful for what other people have and what God has given you. And then watch, the joy in your life will rise. Because stuff doesn't make you happy. God makes you happy. If he gives you a lot, good for you. If he doesn't give you a lot, good for you. Because sometimes not having a lot, there's a lot less stress. When I got married to Julie and we were eating ham sandwiches with squeezed cheese and top ramen every meal, you know what? I didn't even have to worry about paying anything because I didn't have nothing to pay. So the point is that whatever station of life you find yourself in, bless God with it. Bless God with it. Don't lust for more. Be thankful for what you have. Because in that way we honor God. And in that way we find full joy in following God and what he's given us in this life.